Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. And this is Jennifer Schaus. We are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C. as we continue in our DFARS webinar series. This is the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. Our webinars are all complimentary and they're held on Wednesdays and Fridays at noon Eastern. If you're looking for any of the past recordings, you can hop over to YouTube where you'll find 760 plus government contracting videos. And if you're looking for any of the PowerPoints, as many of them have live links in them, you can navigate over to slideshare.net. Log in there with your LinkedIn credentials. Does not cost you anything, and you can download any of the corresponding PowerPoints. If you're interested in sponsoring or advertising in our newsletter, registering to sign up for any of the upcoming DFARS, if you navigate over to our website, select the tab called DFARS, and you'll notice that on the left-hand side, back in 2021, we actually covered the DFARS. So some of that information, it may be out of date based on what has changed. And then the schedule for 2025 is there on your right-hand side. Anything that we've already covered will have a live link over to the YouTube channel. Again, those are all complimentary. If there's an attendee link, it just means we have yet to cover it, and we just go sequentially through the series. Again, keep in mind things from 2021 may be out of date. Okay, a little bit about us. We are based in downtown DC with a primary focus on working with established government contractors and helping them get onto the GSA schedule, as well as manage their schedule with modifications, helping them with audits, renewals, and any other contract actions. Some of the other services that we provide are listed here on your screen, and they're also found on our website. Speaking of GSA schedules, the executive order on March 20th, on paper at least, makes GSA the centralized hub for procurement for the federal government. Again, if you're interested in getting onto the GSA schedule, simply drop us a note, and we're happy to have a discussion. We've also got over 50 webinars on GSA schedules. Again, complimentary. If your company is selling to federal contractors, so banks, law firms, payroll, insurance companies, HR, we do offer advertising in our newsletter, webinar sponsorship, event sponsorship. Drop us an email and we'll send over the media kit with pricing. Speaking of events, we do have one coming up Monday, June 23rd over at the Kennedy Center. We expect anywhere from 200 to 400 attendees. The registration link is there at the bottom of your screen, and the confirmed government agencies are listed here. This is a quarterly event, and we hope to see you there. Here's some of the stats on the newsletter. So if you did want to place an ad, we primarily hit government contractors. They make up the bulk of our 38,000 subscribers. It's a free newsletter, goes out every Monday. Okay, in regards to the webinar series, we want to thank our in-kind sponsors. This is GovEvents. They are the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. Visit govevents.com for more information. The Fairfax County Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars in the local DC metro area. You can find all of our webinars and our events on the Fairfax County Development calendar. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert. That's the go-to publication for finding opportunities for small women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. We also want to thank the Virginia Apex Accelerator. They're a trusted resource and DLA funded organization. They provide local training, counseling, and mentoring for aspiring government contractors, as well as matchmaking events. If you want to sell to state, local, or federal government, please contact your local Apex Accelerator. If you visit the links on your screen, you can review training calendars, locate free resources, and schedule an appointment with a Virginia Apex Accelerator counselor. Okay, we want to thank our paid sponsors, our friends over at BidSpeed. They will actually be at our event on June 23rd. They're our event partner this year. The BidSpeed platform allows users to search public sector opportunities at the federal, state, and local level. Users can also find anything from a compliance matrix to teaming partners, incumbent point of contacts, expiring contracts, and proposal templates. Discover, manage, and secure government contracts with BidSpeed. BidSpeed is an official partner of the SBA's ETG Empower to Grow program. Contact BidSpeed today. And we also want to thank C3. If you're thinking about contracting with the Department of Defense, you need to prepare for CMMC. That's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. C3 suite of CMMC solutions include C3 Command, C3 Catalyst, and C3 Core. These solutions answer the needs of every defense contractor. Whether your CMMC priority is a fast defined path to compliance or you need the flexibility to manage multiple environments, C3 offers solutions. They are your partner with a deep expertise in IT, cybersecurity, and compliance. Contact C3 today. WorkPlan. WorkPlan is an online contract management and accounting tool designed for federal contractors and hosted by AWS, Amazon Web Services. Get and stay DCAA compliant. Manage expenses, timekeeping, and forecasting, plus use the WorkPlan platform to manage your capture process and your CRM. Contractors can integrate their HR and payroll into this one easy-to-use solution. Contact WorkPlan today. Ateria. Ateria specializes in Microsoft Cloud licenses and services for government and government contractors. Ateria provides business advantages for Microsoft Government Cloud licensing, managed IT administration and security, as well as data intelligence services and solutions. They implement secure, compliant, and scalable solutions to enhance operations, reduce risk, and uncover opportunities. Contact Ateria for expert IT assistance. Gov White Papers. Gov White Papers is the central, last but not least, Gov White Papers. They are the central hub for government and government contractors to find and post content geared towards solving public sector challenges. With your free membership, you can add relevant white papers, case studies, data sheets, and more, making your content available to a wider government audience. Do you have the expertise but not the content? Gov White Papers can also create materials to meet your specific needs. Join for free today at govwhitepapers.com. Okay, the reason we are here today is to cover the DFARS, Part 231. We have three lovely ladies from Cohen-Resnick, Lori Allen, Catherine, and Marisol, but I will not butcher their last names. I'm going to put myself on mute and turn the floor over to Lori. Lori, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. My name is Lori Allen, and I'm a director with Cohen-Resnick's government contracting practice. I've been here at Cohen-Resnick for a little over 6 years now, or actually just under 6 years now. And prior to that, I was with DCAA for 9 years, and then prior to that, I was in industry for about 10 years doing corporate accounting. In my career, I have worked with DOD, NASA, DOE, FEMA, NOAA, CMS, and all those other fun acronyms within the government to perform a variety of audits and advise on cost allowability, allocability, reasonableness, realism, and of course, compliance. For our advisory and commercial clients, I specialize in incurred cost submission, cost accounting standards, disclosure statements, rate re-engineering, and then due to that technical background and especially that audit background, I often get tagged into business system audit readiness or gap assessments and things like that for all of the business systems. So that's a little bit about me and my background. Catherine, let's turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Hello, everybody. My name is Catherine Zablonsky. I am a senior manager at Cohen-Resnick. And with over 15 years of experience in the government contracting space, including the last 6 years here at Cohen-Resnick, had to calculate that very quickly, my focus has been in indirect rate optimization for competitive bidding and pricing, looking at government business systems, performing gap assessments similar to that of Lori. I have a specialization and a focus in purchasing and accounting, looking at regulatory environmental compliance analysis and gap assessments. That's looking at your whole entire organization and all of your compliance frameworks and kind of figuring out ways that you can marry them together. Doing cost allowability reviews, internal controls reviews, audit readiness, you name it. It's likely that I've probably touched it and been a part of it. So I'm definitely excited to be here today. Again, thank you all for the opportunity to speak, and I'll hand it over to Marisol to introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marisol Rubalcaba. I'm a senior in the government contracting advisory practice at CONRESNIC. I'm a CPA with a background in financial and cost accounting, internal audits, and federal compliance with regards to like FAR and 2CFR. Prior to joining CONRESNIC, I spent several years in industry where I led initiatives in automation, financial reporting, federal awards, and contract compliance. My experience spans from the CFA reporting, FAR and CAS compliance reviews, supporting organizations in complex financial and regulatory landscapes. And I'm excited to be part of the conversation and look forward to sharing insights on today's topic, DFARS 231 contract cost principles.
Thank you, ladies. So a little bit about CONRESNIC and who we are is we are a full life cycle government contract services provider. And that's both for industry and for the government. So we have an advisory side of the house and we have an auditing side of the house. So I particularly work in the auditing side of the house where we perform audits on behalf of DOE, CMS, NOAA, and some others. And then on the advisory side of the house, where Catherine and Marisol work, they do advisory, full life cycle advisory services. So from wanting to get into the space of GovCon to submitting that first proposal to winning that first contract to incur cost submissions, they can help you do all of that. We've been in this space for over 40 years. CONRESNIC has a lot of great people that wear a lot of multiple hats and have a lot of great technical knowledge. And, you know, we ensure your financial and procurement processes are compliant, which is a big deal in the government, is maintaining that compliance. And we give you efficient and effective advice so you can focus on what matters, and that's profitable growth. So that's just a little bit about CONRESNIC and what we do on both sides of the house. And next slide. This, of course, is the standard legalese. We are not lawyers. We are not providing any legal advice. We are not providing any custom advice. These are all general informational guidance. And if you have any specific needs or concerns, you should speak to your specific consultants, your specific lawyers, your specific specialists. So this is not meant to be specific guidance for you to implement within your organization. Next. All right, Catherine.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. Okay, all right. Well, let's go ahead and get us started. So we're going to start with just a very high-level overview of FAR versus DFARS before we start diving into the foundational cost principles a bit more. So I thought it could be helpful if we started just understanding that FAR is the procurement rulebook, which is really governing how the U.S. federal government acquires its goods and services. And when we talk about FAR 31 cost principles, which are part of FAR, or a single part of FAR, those are really going to be the baseline for how the cost principles are managed across all of the federal contracts. And then we have DFARS, also known as Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, which is a set of very tailored specific regulations for the Department of Defense contracts. And then within DFARS, there is the DFARS Part 231, which are specific rules for DoD contracts that are almost an enhancement, if you will, or a double click into compliance as it relates to cost principles. Finally, there is something called the Procedures Guidance and Information Resources, or PGI, which supports the DFARS with additional context and tools that contractors can leverage. But foundationally, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood sort of the difference between FAR and DFARS and how they interact with one another, because it's going to serve as much of the concept in our presentation going forward. So if we think about just the cost principles themselves, before we move on to the next slide, FAR 31 really establishes cost principles and procedures that determine what costs are allowable, reasonable, and allocable, which I'm going to get to next. And then DFARS Part 231 is really what's going to build on FAR 31, which is those additional tailored DoD contract specific rules. So we're going to deep dive into that, but I wanted everybody just to understand that it's almost a layering activity here. And then, of course, you have the PGI, which is going to be supplemental. It's non-regulatory guidance. It's simply how to interpret and apply DFARS rules. I like to think of it as almost a practical toolkit that contractors can use. But nonetheless, I wanted to make sure that we have the most simplistic view of FAR and DFARS and PGI and how they interact together as we move on to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to orient us a little bit because the approach that we took for this presentation was to say many of the clients that we work with are already operating under FAR. So we said, let's look at DFARS 231 through the lens of what are you already doing as it relates to FAR, and how can we just simply articulate that there's a supplement that happens. So we say current FAR 31 compliance aspects because, as Jennifer talked about earlier in the presentation, probably much of us and many of us on this call are very aware that there is an administrative effort right now to go look through streamlining the FAR. So this is current FAR principles for 31, subject to change, obviously, with anything else that we're presenting on. But just to highlight that, and then of course we have to the right of the screen the additional DFARS requirements. So I just wanted to highlight that. So if we dig into a little bit more on the FAR 31 cost principles and really more specifically into allowable cost. When we talk about FAR, there are three main components that everybody always thinks about. There's reasonableness, allocable, and allowable. So reasonableness is looking at what a prudent business person would incur and would they incur this cost under similar circumstances. Allocable is could that cost properly be assigned to a contract that is based on the benefits that's being received. And then allowable, which is the cost permitted under contract terms and applicable regulation, i.e. FAR 31 cost principles. So under FAR 31, you have to have consistent accounting treatment. You have to have adequate documentation that's maintained for allowability of the cost that you incur. And on the DFAR side, not too dissimilar for what you would expect in FAR. However, there's an enhanced piece on the allowability. As it relates to compliance, you have to look for DFARS clause 252, 231, 7000, which would say the DFARS part 231 is applicable to that DoD contract, and that's where the formal acknowledgement happens. And then for DFARS 231, it introduces some additional restrictions as it relates to certain costs. Now, I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder for further presentation here, but restructuring cost, lobbying costs, and other sensitive and high-risk areas for the defense spending perspective is where you may see some uniqueness on the DFARS Part 231 side. But in order to stay compliant, a good foundational concept for any company who's working in government contracting is to make sure that you've got established internal controls, which really focuses on the DFARS side, making sure that you have a process to identify and track unallowable cost, making sure that these costs are segregated properly within your general ledger, and that, of course, that you have proper documentation are really going to support your audit readiness. Next slide. So compensation and bonuses. Under FAR Part 31, compensation must be reasonable for the services that are being provided, consistent with compensation practices in similar industries or the same industries and geographic areas. Meaning contractors really should be leveraging some type of compensation benchmark and how people are paid. So somebody who traditionally in maybe an entry-level position and say they're making $60,000 a year, but you're perhaps paying them $200,000 a year, it's going to go back to a reasonableness aspect if we look under the concepts of FAR 31. On the FAR 31 side, bonuses are generally allowable so long as they're documented and there's an established policy that's consistently applied across the organization. And of course, severance pay could be allowable, barring that it meets certain requirements within the contract regulations and or the regulations themselves. Now, on the DFAR side for 231, this introduces additional limitations, especially around those sensitive areas around bonuses and severance pay, as specifically in the restructuring and mergering side. So claiming for allowability, you have to have proper documentation. You have to be compliant from a justification perspective. You must make sure that you have all of the information and support is well documented and maintained and easy to access. And then really the big highlight on the DFARS side is that executive compensation must be reviewed and it cannot exceed DoD established thresholds. So making sure that contractors have established procedures to evaluate, document its compensation processes and how compensation decisions are made, and then making sure that you have clear records that are able to support the allowability of those decisions on executive pay and bonuses that are specific to the DoD space. Next slide. All right, so internal independent research and development and bid and proposal costs under FAR 31 are generally considered an allowable expense so long as they're properly documented. They're allocable to government contracts, i.e. they're not commercial. They're consistently treated across all of the government contracts. And again, probably no surprise to anybody, but proper documentation is maintained. Under DFARS Part 231, some additional requirements are there which talk about contractors needing to submit IR&D project summaries to the DoD, which allows for greater visibility and alignment with DoD technology priorities. And then again, just to reiterate, making sure that these costs are tracked, they're reported separately in your general ledger, and that you have always properly clear documented support as it relates to that DoD evaluation and oversight, which come into play on the DFARS side. I always recommend to my clients that aligning your IR&D efforts, if you're working in the DoD space, with the technology goals of the DoD tend to help. So making sure that you're doing that, and then of course a transparent reporting and an internal tracking system in order to be able to accommodate the segregation of those costs and being able to support any of the evaluations that you may undergo from the IR&D side. Next slide. All right, so lobbying and political activity. So under FAR Part 31, any costs that are associated with lobbying to influence legislation are strictly unallowable under the federal contract. So anything that's influencing federal, state, or local laws are going to also be considered unallowable. Again, you have to have a mechanism to be able to segregate those costs. Traditionally, you would see an account within your general ledger that would be specific for lobbying activities. However, on the DFARS Part 231, it goes a bit further in broadening that definition of unallowable lobbying activity. It also includes indirect influence efforts such as third-party groups or participating in grassroots campaigns. Contractors are prohibited from using any type of federal funds for really any political activity, regardless if it's formal, informal, direct, or indirect. So ensuring compliance in this area, making sure that you're obviously have a way to segregate those costs is going to be imperative. Making sure that you're running through your costs and conducting your own internal audits or compliance reviews regularly to make sure those costs are being properly segregated, especially on the indirect side of the house as it relates to the DFARS 231 requirement. And then making sure that you've got proper documentation that's going to demonstrate that lobbying costs are properly identified and ultimately excluded from government billing. Obviously, these rules are going to be in place to protect taxpayer funds and ensure that federal taxpayer dollars are used solely for contract performance and not necessarily in political influence. So that's why there's a heightened sensitivity on this. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Marisol, who will wrap us up with a few more slides.
Thank you, Catherine. I'll be continuing the remaining cost principles, including areas where the FAR cost principles apply without any additional DFARS supplements. Next slide, please. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. Can you jump back? I'm sorry. Perfect. Public relations and advertising costs. So under FAR 31, generally disallows advertising and public relation costs unless they meet specific exceptions. Contractors may claim costs for recruitment ads or notices required by contract with proper documentation. Just like as a general example, costs for job postings on industry websites are allowable if they are necessary for contract performance. Now, when we look at DFARS, it further restricts costs related to leasing government equipment for promotional purposes. In addition, contractors must ensure that public relation efforts do not imply DoD endorsement or misuse government assets. Again, echoing on what Catherine has been mentioning throughout the presentation, the policies need to be updated to reflect DFARS like exclusions and ensure that they're compliant with DoD specific limitations. So policies are very key. Next slide, please. Insurance and indemnification. So under FAR, it allows insurance costs if they are required by law or contract and are reasonable in amount. Self-insured programs must be properly documented and actuarially sound. And then contractors must maintain records of premiums, claims, and coverage terms to support cost allowability. That echoes again to what Catherine has mentioned earlier in the presentation. Record retention is also very important. Under DFARS, it imposes additional requirements for insurance related to higher risk DoD operations, such as flight risk. Clauses such as 252.228.7001 and 252.217-712 may apply, which requires contractors to meet specific risk management standards. Now, the risk management policies must be reviewed to ensure alignment with the DFARS insurance provisions. Next slide, please. External recruiting costs. FAR currently allows restructuring costs if they are necessary and reasonable for contract performances. Contractors must document the nature and purpose of restructuring activities to support cost allowability. Severance and incentive payments must comply with FAR cost principles and be properly justified. Again, this is a common theme we've seen in the other areas, topics we've been covering. Documentation is important as well. So policies, record retention, and documentation are some themes we're seeing along the presentation. Under DFARS 231, it limits the allowability of restructuring costs unless there are savings to the DoD and are demonstrated and approved. Bonuses or payments exceeding the normal compensation during the restructuring are unallowable under DFARS. And lastly, contractors must submit restructuring plans for DOE review and approval before claiming those costs. Next slide, please. The last kind of topic we're drilling in detail is the contracts with educational institutions and non-for-profits. FAR Part 31 provides tailored cost principles for educational institutions and non-for-profits under FAR 31.3 and 31.7. Costs must be reasonable, allocable, and consistent with institutional policies to be considered allowable. And documentation must support the allowability of indirect and direct costs incurred by these entities. When we look at DFARS, it references these parts but adds expectations for transparency and alignment with the DoD goals. Again, echoing on what Catherine mentioned earlier, we've previously advised clients to align their internal research goals to align with DoD. And so the same goes here for educational institutions and non-for-profits. Institutions may be required to provide additional justification for certain cost categories under the DFARS, and compliance systems must be adapted to meet the DoD specific audit and reporting expectations. Next slide, please. So this slide highlights areas where the FAR cost principles apply without any additional supplements. This could include routine cost categories such as like depreciation, travel, training, and general business expenses. Because these costs are not considered uniquely sensitive or high risk for DoD contracts, the DFARS does not impose extra compliance requirements. For example, travel costs to attend a professional conference are allowable under FAR 31.205-46, and there is no FARS overlay. Similarly, depreciation and company-wide Company-owned equipment is governed by FAR 31-205-11 with no additional DoD-specific rules. The matrix here helps to visualize which cost areas are governed solely by the FAR to help contractors focus their compliance efforts where DFARS does apply. Now that we've covered both the FAR and the DFAR cost principles and identified where each applies, it's important to know where to go from here. Laurie will be covering some resources we've gathered for the audience on the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. There's a lot of resources out there for the FAR, for the DFARS, both on our website, which is GovCon 360, out on DCAA's website. I constantly tell people in trainings that DCAA tries to give you an open book test. So a lot of their information, a lot of their guidelines, a lot of their audit programs, their contract audit manual, their guides to specific areas of cost are all out there for your perusal. Just Google it. So here are some specific resources that we wanted to provide you, and a kind of a cheat sheet or a worksheet there on the right-hand side that says, you know, hey, these are always unallowable, these are sometimes allowable or unallowable, and it just kind of is a great spot reference for you to take a look at if you're on the fence about whether to dig deeper into a cost element. But when all else fails, you know, Google or whatever search engine that you like helps a lot to get you started. I know in today's environment of ChatGPT and Copilot and all of those other resources, I just say be careful. I always say trust but verify. Find the answer, but then don't forget to dig a little bit deeper and make sure that you're getting actual, true, factual information. They all give you the resources, or they should give you the resources of where they're pulling the information from, which is what I like to do when I'm researching and looking for information. I ask Copilot, hey, give me when are travel costs, OCONUS travel costs allowable or unallowable? And then it'll give me an answer, but the nice thing is with that answer, it's giving me resources of where it got that answer. And I have found some useful tools and some useful places to go look for information that I hadn't experienced before. So from that perspective, it's a great tool to use, but trust but verify. Don't take it at face value. I think that's all I have to say here. Catherine or Marisol, any additional resources you want to drop in before we move on?
I'm good on my end, Lori.
Awesome. All right, slide. Thank you guys so much for attending. We really appreciated having you here today. As I mentioned before, we are a full service GovCon practice, but we're also a full service CPA firm. So if you have tax questions, accounting questions, audit questions in any way, shape, or form, we've got a specialist on our staff that can help you out. My contact information is here. I would love for you to reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect. And I'll let you go forward to the next slide so you can grab Catherine's information. We'll leave this here for a moment. Catherine, any closing words?
I just want to reiterate and thank everybody again for the opportunity to speak today, and also for everybody taking the time out of their day to join us. It was a wonderful experience, and we're very grateful for it. Thank you.
All right, and now Marisol, any last words?
No, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity, and please feel free to reach out with any questions and see how we can help you out.
All right, Jennifer, back to you.
Super, excellent job, ladies, as always. Again, if anyone has questions, you've got all the contact information for Lori, Catherine, and Marisol. In the event that you are listening or watching this video on YouTube, give us a like, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. All of our GovCon videos are on the YouTube channel. There's 766, I think was the last count, with a little bit over 9,000 subscribers. So it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. You'll get alerted immediately anytime we upload new content. So feel free to take a moment out of your day to jump over to YouTube. And again, thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll pick up next week with DFARS Part 232 and 233 on Wednesday and Friday. Have a great weekend, and thanks everybody for your time.